have that in your account.
Yes, we do.
I'm sorry, Jim, but I have strict instructions from your wife.
Yeah, I know that.
I'm sorry, she won't let me give you any money.
Well, good morning, have and have not fans. It is currently 7 a.m. I actually got a decent amount of sleep last night, so that was good. And here we are, another Temptation Tuesday. And as you just saw, that was our first glimpse of the episode. A phone conversation between Lloyd the banker and Jim Cryer. Thanks to John Snyder for putting this on his Instagram last night. Fingers crossed that OWN actually puts out their promotional clips early in the day, because if you recall last Tuesday, I didn't do any videos on Tuesday because OWN, for whatever reason, didn't post any of their typical clips and whatnot until like 8 o'clock. And at that point, there was no need of me to record because most of the videos I had done up to that point covered the release clips. And plus, it was just way too late in the day. So if they release their clips between maybe noon and 5 o'clock like they used to, then I will do videos if those clips have, parts of the episode that I haven't already discussed in full detail. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to combine two videos. Now, I'm going to talk about the clip you just saw. And if you saw my video that I posted last night about, what was it? Will Katheryn's breast cancer resurface? I mentioned in that video that I might do a follow-up on, would Jim Cryer actually be broke if Katheryn left him? Because there are some elements that have happened over the past few seasons that we really need to go back and explore. Now, let's kind of break down the phone conversation there. And once again, this was only 12 seconds. So later today, they might release an extended version of this clip, which is typically 45 to 50 seconds. And then this might give us more information about the actual phone conversation. Now, we can assume this takes place, in the morning, because it's morning on the show right now. And I think, and I wrote down the dialogue, you don't have that in your account. Yes, Lloyd, we do. And he's like, no, and your wife gave me strict instructions not to give you any more money. I know that. So this is an interesting clip that they released, because I think this coincides with the part of the trailer we got last week where, Benny and Hannah are sitting at the bank, and then the teller's like, how much money do you think is in your account? So that might hint that the 8.8 or $8.9 million, Wyatt's inheritance, that may hint at the money no longer being there. But then when you go over to Jim talking to Lloyd, it's like, well, the money you think is in your account isn't there. So basically it seems that both Jim with his account, but then Hannah and Benny with their joint account, there's money missing there. But the thing to remember is the way Jim said it, yes, Lloyd, we do. Was he talking about his account or Katheryn's account? Because something doesn't seem right. But you could assume that, well, Jim possibly meant like Wyatt's inheritance would be in his account. Because if you remember, Oscar was given instructions to get the money from Wyatt's account and then put it into Jim's bank account. Hence why he had the routing numbers and whatnot. And he did it until, Candace interfered. So if Candace never interfered, Wyatt's inheritance, if I'm not mistaken, would have wound up in Jim's bank account. I think that's how it went. But if you remember earlier in 2018, when Katheryn caught Gia and Jim together, Jim got Katheryn to call off her threats for a divorce. And also she got on the phone, called Lloyd, and then gave him back $10 million. So Jim has $10 million in his account, at least up until this point, allegedly. So remember, Katheryn gave him back $10 million because he's like, look, I made money while we were together. I had businesses. I was a judge. Give me my money back. Because remember, after Katheryn said she was getting a divorce, she cut off all of his credit cards, drained his accounts. And that's why it was hard for Jim to even get a room at the hotel. When we first met Broderick, he had to go over to David's house, the new house he got with Erica, and get his, cash and whatnot so he can afford a room. Because remember, Katheryn had the mansion just cleared out, so Jim had no place to go. But eventually, he got her to, give him back $10 million as well as reactivate his credit cards and whatnot. Now, one thing that we have to go back on is go back to when Candace extorted the $7.4 million from Jim, and this was follow up for after Amanda died. You know, when Katheryn and Jim were sitting in Amanda's room just trying to find any kind of clues as to why she did what she did. And this was before her journal was found. And Wyatt was in the backyard talking with Jennifer Salison and I think one of the police officers, like a detective or whatnot. And then, you know, they pretty much said, you know, Amanda's dead. Wyatt's about to throw his life away, but they don't even care. Basically, it was a conversation where I got a call from Lloyd today, or the bank, saying that, you know, $7.4 million was moved from the account. Do you want to tell me about that? No. And then at that point, Katheryn said she was done. They're getting a divorce. Jim Cryer is allowed to walk out of here with his life and the clothes on his back with not a cent out of her account. And he said that was fair. But then things kind of shifted, because if you go back to that episode where Jim gave a toast, I think this was the opening of the episode, where he says he's just done. He calls Wyatt downstairs. He and Katheryn are just sitting. They were talking about how the funeral, Amanda's funeral is coming up. And then after the funeral, I'm going to go and drive you to jail. And he's like, you know what? After this, me and your mother are just going to take a little vacation. How does that sound? And it sounded like those two were on good terms at that point in the story. So basically, remember, at this point, we're talking Have and Have Not season 2. Jim and Katheryn were pretty much going to retire from everything. You know, Katheryn and Jim agreed he wouldn't give another cent of her money, because remember, at that point, she said the $7.4 million was his alimony, meaning that he wouldn't get another thin dime or another red cent from her. But then you move forward several episodes when Jim and Oscar's plan was successful, and I could be wrong, but I think Oscar said he was able to recover somewhere between $3 to $5 million, because at that point, you know, Candace just burned through the money, you know, between buying the 2 houses and getting the tow yard, the shopping spree, the car and whatnot. There was only maybe about 4 million, or so, I forgot the exact amount, but there were a couple million left. So David was able to get it from Oscar and then give it back to Jim. So I don't know if that canceled out Katheryn's alimony, if you will, where it's like, yeah, that's $7.4 million, that's your alimony. But then the money that Jim was able to recover, he got back. But then you have to look at the fact that, you know, Jim orchestrated things with Lloyd, so Candace could borrow the $2 million in cash, but if she didn't pay every single cent back by a certain air balloon date, like I think it was like a week or a couple of days, then they would foreclose on the houses in the tow yard, basically taking everything back from Candace. So in a sense, Jim would actually kind of get his money back in a way. I think that's the way it played out, because remember, he and Jim, and I think Veronica as well, all have seats at the bank. But I think out of everyone, Katheryn has the largest, maybe share is the right word, but I think they just say the largest seat. They all have seats on the board at the bank. And then when it comes to the Artesian Hotel, there is a board, but Katheryn has the largest share. So basically, we know that Katheryn even threatened, you know, just foreclose on everything that Veronica has at the bank, because, you know, Veronica has a lot of debt and whatnot, but then she's acting like, you know, she's a millionaire. And then based off this one clip, it seems that Katheryn has more authority at the bank than Jim, given the fact that she gave Lloyd specific and strict instructions not to give Jim another dime. Because if Jim had equal or more power than Katheryn, he could just say, as he said before, Lord, get your fat, sweaty ass up and do what I told you to do. But Katheryn made it clear that, you know what, you're not to give him another thin dime. So basically, we kind of broke down the fact that at one point, Jim was to not get another dime or penny from Katheryn after Candace extorted the money. But then things might have changed once the remaining millions of dollars were given back to Jim and put back into the account. Then we move forward to Katheryn wanting a divorce and then cutting Jim off in every sense of the word. But then later on in that same season in 2018, she pretty much said, you know what, fine, whatever. Because Jim at that point was like, you know what, you need me. I don't care what you say. You're nothing without me. Now go ahead and reopen my account. So the $10 million was back in there. But then based off this one scene here, it's kind of odd. I'm like, well, does this mean that Jim no longer has any money whatsoever? Because after coming out of the shower, because I think, when she woke up from her drunken state, Katheryn just, went to the shower, then, kind of sobered up a bit, called Lloyd and got the money taken out of the account. It's kind of confusing. I don't know if this scene is going to take place before or after Katheryn and Jim had their conversation in the kitchen about Wyatt. And did Katheryn tell Lloyd to just cut off Jim once again, take back the $10 million that she gave him, and then give him no other money? Or is it a situation where, okay, so did the bank take back Wyatt's inheritance, and instead of putting it into Jim's account, put it into Katheryn's account? Or did Katheryn open up another account at the bank for Hannah without her knowing it, and then wired the millions of dollars from their joint bank account to this new bank account? That way it couldn't be traced. Because remember, Katheryn has more power at the bank than Veronica or Jim. And remember, Veronica was the one that set up the account for Candace to begin with when she tried to get this money from Oscar and Wyatt. So I could definitely see, theoretically, Katheryn setting up another bank account, taking the millions from Hannah and Benny's joint account, transferring it over to this new account, and then covering her tracks, giving Lloyd the instructions that you are not to tell a soul that I did this, because I believe she has the power to do so. I think that's a bit of a stretch, but I do think it is quite possible, because I really don't know where the money went. Because I did do that video that's almost at 30,000 hits, who took the money from Benny and Hannah's account, and I said that it might be someone from the government, Landon or somebody from Candace's team, Charles's team, trying to clean up Candace's messes, and almost $9 million from an extortion would not be a good look. So one could make the argument that, and I'm going to throw this in here because I think I forgot to mention this. Well, honestly, I didn't think about this. In the video, I said, will Scott find out about the truth about Oscar's death and, about Charles turning his back on Candace? What if, and I'm just going to throw this out there, what if Scott finds out that Candace killed Oscar, and then Oscar was somebody hired by the current administration to ruin Charles's political career? What if he thinks that because Candace was given the task of getting rid of Oscar, and because she killed him, the job was successful, and then that's how she got at $8.8 million? That would be an awful story. So in order to cover their tracks, Landon and his team would have had to take the money back. And if you're wondering, well, Jeremy, it is a joint account, and Benny and Hannah would probably both have, they would both have to sign over the money, if that decision was being made. But I mean, you got to think about it. This is the federal, not federal government. Well, given the fact that Landon is the point man for Charles's campaign team and whatnot, one could make the argument that, well, I'm pretty sure that if he wanted to, he has the connections to have the money forcibly removed. I mean, think of people who get money just drafted from their account by the government for taxes or whatever the case may be. Or sadly enough, we just live in a time where people are getting their student loan debt ripped out of their account. Oh, you aren't paying enough each month, or you haven't paid it all, so we're just going to take a huge amount of your check each month, and then that money's just gone because it's the freaking government. They could just do it. So I'm willing to theorize that I doubt that. Well, yeah, I think that the government may, and when I say government, I'm either referring to Charles's campaign team or possibly the current administration. But I would say probably more so Charles's campaign team, because it's a big mess that they need to clean up. And if you're saying that Katheryn would never do something like that, remember how she took Benny from the county hospital without Hannah's permission in order to save his life, and she thought her son was gone? Well, yeah, I think she would do it because it's for Hannah's own good, whether she wants it or not. And we're at a point in the story where Katheryn is still rich, and it begs the question, how would she be living without Jim? Hopefully happier, but at the same time, money is money to her. It's just money. I think David had the same attitude, when Maggie confronted him about, Veronica burning down the house. And it's like, well, I wouldn't take out the insurance policy on the house because it will make it look like the fire was a setup. And then it's like, well, it doesn't matter. Money is only money. So I think him and Katheryn definitely have similar attitudes about it because they're rich without it, no matter what. But, I never thought about this. David was a judge just like Jim. David is African American, so technically he's sort of like the Uncle Phil of the haves and the have-nots. Never thought of that until now. But basically, the point of this video is to determine if they were to get a divorce or separated or whatever the case may be, would Jim be broke? Technically, no, in terms of if they didn't go to court or anything, they just signed whatever documents and just separated or whatever the situation would be. But if Katheryn wanted to, she could just yank the money and then Jim would be without a dime. And I could definitely see that happening. But the conversation between Lloyd and Jim in this one clip is as open-ended as the scene from the trailer last week where Benny and Hannah are looking stunned because the banker is looking like, how much money do you think is in your account? Somewhat implying that the millions of dollars that is or was in their joint account isn't there anymore. So I'm really hoping that this episode pays off because like I kind of said in my Jeffrey's live video, I am not looking forward, but I'm also looking forward to is Jeffrey still going to be defending Justin in this episode? Because I feel like we're going to get a lot of Jeffrey and Justin. So, off the bat, I'm probably going to be docking points off the episode, depending on how it goes. Because remember, it looks like we're also going to have Veronica and David in the mix. So hopefully this creates an interesting dynamic as opposed to just the same old between Jeffrey and Justin. And we also know that Jeffrey will be at David's house, so he's not going to stay at that apartment. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But with that being said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you think that if they got a divorce or separated, that Jim would be broke without Katheryn? If we were talking before he decided to run for governor, announcing he was going to run for governor, before, all the extortions and whatnot with Candace, before all of his bridges were burned, like Katheryn said, your name hasn't meant shit in this town since you decided to run for governor. So at this point, Jim isn't able to charm his way into, what's kind of funny? Jim was a person who kind of charmed his way into everything as Candace kind of conned people using her, sexual, abilities. So it's one of those situations where I really do feel that we will definitely see a lot of what makes these characters themselves. Because believe it or not, Candace and Jim are really cut from the same mold. And that goes back to how this series started because of these two. The fact that when they see something and they want it, they will do whatever it takes to get it. Kind of like, Gone with the Wind, one of my favorite books and movies of all time. Scarlett O'Hara, I believe is the last name. Definitely a person that you wouldn't want to really model yourself after in terms of the kind of person they are. But one thing to look at in terms of their personality is that they are driven and then they'll do whatever it takes to get what they want. Admirable, but at sometimes, you have to question their morals. But with that being said, do you think that Jim's money is completely gone? That's a common misconception amongst fans. Remember, Katheryn gave Jim the $10 million for his account. Jennifer Salison gave Wyatt his inheritance and his own bank account. So when Candace intercepted that inheritance money, she wasn't taking any money from Jim's bank account. She was intercepting the transaction where Oscar was getting Wyatt's inheritance and sending that over to Jim. Candace jumped in and pretty much put her account number where Jim's was, and it went to her account that Veronica made for her at the bank. So Candace took nothing from Jim's personal account. So that begs the question, did Katheryn forcibly have Lloyd remove the money from Jim's account that she had placed in there last year? We'll just have to find out, because maybe since it's morning, Jim is calling the bank right now to see if the transaction was made, from Hannah's bank account to his bank account. I don't know for sure, but we'll just have to wait and see, because let's say if, and I'm just kind of speculating here, let's say that the person knocking at Hannah's door in the last episode was Jim, And then, Benny comes down, then beats him up, throws him on the sidewalk. And then it's like, we were going to the bank to give you your funky ass money anyway. So Jim goes back to Katheryn's house. And, as Benny and Hannah are going to the bank, then a little while later, he calls the bank to see if the money's there, but it's not. Same thing with Hannah and Benny going to the bank and the money isn't there. I know, guys, I know this video is confusing, and I'm not mad at the episode preview because guess what? It has me speculating and thinking things instead of laying it all out for me. So I'm actually excited about that. But with that being said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the money situation. If you are new to this channel, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification icon. And on top of that, make sure you check me out on social media. Links are in the description below. Congratulations on making it to the end of this video. If you like what you just saw, make sure to hit the thumbs up button, or if you have anything you would like to add to the video, make sure to leave your thoughts in the comment section below. If you want to keep up with me on social media, go to the description box. All of my links for social media are right there. Also, if you feel like you would like to donate to the channel, make sure to click on the link to PayPal. Any amount helps. $1, $5, $20. As a full-time YouTuber, any support from my fans really does mean a lot to me. Finally, make sure to hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification icon. That way you're kept up to date on any new content I post to the channel. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll talk to you in the next video.